Joining us now, the Speaker of the House, John Boehner. Mr. Speaker, how are you?
Laura, I'm doing fine.
Here's my question. Are there any gimmicks in this budget deal?
We have $315 billion in spending that we're going to cut over the next 10 years. And let's not forget where we started this year. The president said no cuts from the current spending line, none. And the fact is, we're going to spend $78.5 billion less this year than what the president wanted to spend. And if Republicans had not won the majority in the House last November, I'll guarantee you we'd be spending $78.5 billion more this year than we spent last.
Well, when you look at the analysis of these numbers, though, the claim that we have cut $38 billion, which certainly was a lot less than the original $100 billion, then it was certainly a lot less than the $60 billion. And then when you looked at the analysis, it went down to $20 billion, and now it's $353 million. Is that accurate?
That is not an accurate figure. Because when you cut the spending, some of that spending is going to occur this year, some of it was going to roll into next year. And the fact is that these are real spending cuts. When the Senate Budget Office says it's $315 billion over the next 10 years, that's $315 billion. This is the largest non-defense spending cut in our nation's history. Is it all I wanted? No, I wanted more. Have you seen me out there celebrating this? No, you haven't. But this is a good first step. And I can assure you, Laura, I fought for every dime of spending cuts I could get out of Harry Reid and President Obama. And if we had Mitch McConnell in charge of the Senate, we had a Republican president, there'd be a lot more cuts.
The Wall Street Journal is calling it Spending Cut Hokum. National Review says it no longer supports the deal.
And the Weekly Standard says these are real cuts. This is a deal worth taking, and that we ought to proceed. And this is the first step. There are going to be lots of fights over the next 18 months in terms of cutting spending. And we need to get this one out of the way today and deal with it because tomorrow is the next step. And that's Paul Ryan's budget, where we're going to be cutting trillions while we save Medicare and Medicaid.
Why do you think that on this issue of the right track, wrong track that the country's on right now, the polls are just terrible on this? About 60% of the country thinks we're going down the wrong track. Why do you think Washington hasn't been able to turn that perception around, if indeed these are meaningful cuts at this point?
Well, the American people are still asking the question, where are the jobs? It's the number one issue on the minds of Americans, and we know that this excessive spending creates uncertainty for those who would invest in our economy. We've heard it from economists. I've heard it from every business person known to man. These budget deficits, $1.5 trillion this year, budget deficits of $1 trillion as far as the eye can see. They've scared the American people and American employers to death. That's why cutting spending and dealing with our long-term problems has to be done, and it has to be done now.
I had dinner last night with one of your colleagues, and this congressman, I think you like, and I think you know well, said to me that he's concerned that we conservatives have taken weapons off the table from the very beginning of this conversation. And you know, Mr. Speaker, that I understand how tough this is. I mean, you have a very different role than certainly a lot of us play in this important debate. However, there's great concern among people who want you to be successful and desperately want you to succeed in reforming this government, that we are approaching these discussions based in a lot of fear for how it will be perceived if we don't vote for something that will prevent a shutdown, or fear about not raising the debt ceiling, instead of a position of strength that you came into office with, you came into the speakership with, and that's somehow dissipated today. Do you think that concern about the fear-based way of negotiating and leading this is unfair?
Well, Laura, let's go back to the beginning of the year. We'll go back to last fall. There was no talks about cutting spending. Even the president in the State of the Union was talking about continuing the spending spree. And look at where we are today, passing a budget for the balance of this year that will, in fact, cut $38.5 billion yet.
You're still standing by that? You're still standing by the $38 billion?
Absolutely. I've got the numbers. And it's $78.5 billion less than what the president wanted to spend. And look at how the debate has changed dramatically in Washington. away from more stimulus spending to the fact that we actually have to cut spending and get our fiscal house in order. The debate has moved dramatically, and it would not have happened had we not won the majority last November. The debate is going to continue to shift in the direction of taking on our long-term fiscal challenges. We have a plan. We went to the White House yesterday, had a nice meeting with the president. And while we had our differences, at least at the White House, it seemed that the president understood that we had to address these challenges. And then he goes out and gives the most partisan speech that I can imagine. 18 months before an election, he's out giving an election day speech where frankly, he has no plan to deal with our long-term challenges and apparently has no interest.
Now, Mr. Speaker, doesn't that tell you something about the deal that you struck? He went out there and he stared you down yesterday. He stared you down and he insulted Paul Ryan, and he showed his gratitude about working with you. Don't you think?
Listen, I'm not going to get into the back and forth with the president. I can tell you I was very disappointed in the president's speech yesterday. He clearly is not ready to grapple with the long-term debt that's staring us down and going to imprison the future for our kids and our grandkids. And if he won't lead, we will.
What about the 72-hour rule? I thought we weren't going to vote on anything when we didn't have the 72 hours to consider what we're actually voting on.
What the House rules say are 3 days. And the way they've calculated, we're meeting our commitment. It's listen, running this place, you have to remember that the founders designed the Congress as an institution that they didn't want to see it work very efficiently or very well. And let me tell you, they did a very good job. But the fact is that people have had ample time to read it. People have had ample time to take a look at it.
It's not 72 hours, though.
And the House will have its chance. It's had its 3 days under our rules to consider this.
It doesn't seem to be 72 hours. But I just think all of this adds up to people's, they're concerned. They're a little cynical when it's not 72 hours. And Pawlenty yesterday came out. I'm sure you heard what he had to say. He said he was opposed to the budget deal the more he looked at it. Your spokesman came out and said that violates the Reagan command of, never speak ill of a fellow Republican. But don't you think people have legitimate questions about this? I mean, I was a little disappointed in that response by your spokesperson.
Listen, I want more. I wanted more spending cuts. And I'll just tell you this. That anybody worked harder to get every dime of spending off the table than I did. And I understand people want more. I understand some just want to have a big fight. The fact is that we were able to cut spending. We have a plan that really will cut spending. And God bless the naysayers. I understand they wanted more. But this is the best deal that we could get at this point. It was time to take this step, vote for it, lock in these savings, and get on to the discussion about saving trillions.
Is the debt ceiling, the raising the debt ceiling, is that off the table, a vote against that? And you guys are going to take that weapon off the table right at the beginning?
Listen, we have obligations as a government, and if people want to see a true economic meltdown, then they can go ahead and not pass raising the debt ceiling. But we've made it clear to the president, we are not going to raise the debt ceiling without real spending cuts and real reforms to these programs that are driving us right off the economic cliff.
Well, you didn't hear those yesterday in the speech, right? So doesn't that mean there has to be a no vote on the debt ceiling? Because you didn't hear the real reforms yesterday.
If the president won't lead, we will.
John Boehner, I loved what you did for the D.C. Scholarship Fund. That was a wonderful thing, and I know you personally fought for that. I know how difficult this job is. We appreciate it very much. You're joining us today on the Laura Ingraham Show.